My name is Alan. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Alan.
I apologize. You may hear a screaming baby in the background periodically. I have a lot of kids. That screaming baby in the background. Um, so my sobriety date is May 31st of 2018. And right there, that should tell you that we have a lot in common. That tells you that I have a problem with alcohol. That tells you that I cannot successfully drink alcohol. That tells you I'm a 10 percenter. So I grew up, I was born in Houston, Texas, but I didn't grow up there. I grew up in Pennsylvania. Both my parents are addicts and alcoholics. I was a crack baby is the term that was used back then, I believe. I was, addicted when I came out of the womb, basically. I was pretty much immediately placed into foster care as a baby. There was like one. I lived with my grandparents for like a year or two. And then when I was 4, I moved up to PA to live with my aunt and uncle. And I will refer to as my parents from here on out. It's really confusing if I don't tell you that part. So I grew up in a house that wasn't mine, with a family that I didn't really come from, right from the gate, it made me feel like an outsider. It made me feel like I wasn't part of, even though they made every attempt to make me feel like I was part of, I felt like I wasn't. And that was looking back, that's on me, not them. You know what I mean? I had a really great childhood. I grew up in a Christian home. We weren't poor. I mean, my dad, he was a working man. We were middle class. Had what we needed and had most of what I wanted. Played sports. We ate as a family at dinner, like the whole 9 yards. Like the white picket fence style family. That was us. We come from a bigger family. There were 5 of us. And then my parents and my biological sister lived with me. She's the only full blood relative I have, and she's still in active use. And that's a really difficult thing for me to deal with sometimes, understanding that I don't have any control over that. Middle school, high school, good kid. Started smoking. Was like, let me phrase that. Picked up my first cigarette when I was 12. I did not start smoking until way after that. But I don't really drink in high school. I don't really remember the first time I picked up a drink. I don't have that awesome first time drink story, I guess, like everybody does. But I have. I was an awkward kid in high school. I was in a band. I was a chorus member. I didn't play sports. I was too small. I wrestled. I was terrible, but I did it. And I was kind of an outcast. I embraced that punk rock emo genre of person. I loved the music. I was in a band. I played guitar. I thought I was like popular amongst the unpopular, and as I look back, I realized that my life wasn't really that bad at all. I had a lot of friends, a lot of people that cared about me. But I always felt like I wasn't part of anything. I graduated high school at a $110. I was like 5'9", so I was really, really tiny. I was really tall, really lanky. A lot of people made fun of me for that. I'm not so tiny anymore. I blame sobriety for that. But I went to college and joined the Army. And what I found out is I went to a college that was exactly like my hometown, first of all. It was very small, homegrown, home feel. I graduated with 62 people in my high school class, so I come from a very small area. And where I went to college at, it was very similar. They had one bar, two distributors. Like, it wasn't this wild big college party in town, right? And I loved it. I got to change who I was. I went from being this punk rock emo kid to, like, for the lack of a better term, I thought I was Eminem. I cut my hair. I shaved my head. I put Walmart brand diamond earrings in my ears because I was a college kid on a budget. I started, like, really trying to be like this gangster, because that's what I wanted to be. Like, I watched too much TV, right? And I saw these guys, and I wanted to be like them, right? I wanted to be like these drug dealers that I saw on TV. So that's what I did. That's what I became. I started getting tattoos, and I changed my entire personality. I went from being this nice homegrown kid to, like, this guy that didn't want to be messed with, and like, I would fight all the time, and I started selling drugs, and the first time that I remember drinking, I was still that long-haired emo kid, and I went to a party. My first semester, I did really, really well. I had like a 3.6 or something. Like, I had a 3.4. It was a pretty decent first semester. But I remember going to this party. They're like stripper poles. They're playing beer pong. Like, it's a college party, right? And I sit down and I grab and I take this first drink, and, like, all that awkwardness that I felt, and, like, this is where that like first drink story really began for me. That feeling of all of a sudden I could talk to any girl I wanted to, and I didn't have to, like, be scared of who I was, like, shot forward, right? And I went from being that awkward kid that, like, talked a lot but didn't talk about anything to being like, well, in my mind, I was Rico Suave. What I apparently sounded like was a lot more like one of the Charlie Brown cartoons, right? Like, where no one could really understand me. And I was, like, falling all over myself. But I didn't see that. And so I embraced this new character. And that's when, the army and this gangster, and I started selling drugs. Like, I got into all this crazy stuff, like, really quick, right? I ended up dropping out of college before they could kick me out. A quick story that I like to tell because it's important to me. I worked for my dad for a summer, and he was a big boss at this coal refinery in my hometown area. And all I had to do was I had to go in the mornings and weigh in trucks as they brought coal in. So I sat in this shack and wrote numbers down all day. That's all I had to do. There was nothing else. And the truckers would have to wake me up because I was either drunk or hungover and would fall asleep all the time. And my dad used to take pictures of me and then send them to me, like, all pissed off, right? And I remember that. Like, I remember doing that to him. I remember putting him in a position of, like, having to either A, fire his son, or B, like, just dump his work, basically. And that's a shitty position to put somebody in. I didn't care, though, right? Like, I had started, and I was like 21 years old, and it was game on. I was out of the army. And 21, 22, man, things really started to kick up. I started bartending, and that was my profession for, like, the next 10 years, right? Like, that's what I did. I was a bartender, a bar manager, restaurant industry, service industry. I loved it. I ran a nightclub for a while. Like, that's what I did. I started selling a lot of drugs, and I thought I was living the lifestyle. I thought, like, they talk about that I have arrived moment. I had that moment. I was like, this is it. Like, this is who I've always wanted to be. My oldest son was born when I was 24. And I proceeded to have 4 more kids between that time and now. I also have a stepson. It quickly became less of a lifestyle of fun and more of a necessity. I got into a lot of, I said I sold drugs, and I didn't just sell them after a certain point, man. I dove head deep into that kind of stuff. And that's part of my story, you know? There was all kinds of crazy stuff that happened. Um, I got on probation at my second DUI. I totaled my car. They told me that if I would have carried a passenger with me, I would have killed him. And normally I don't say no when people want rides home, and I did that night. And that's, to me, I look back and I see that as an act of God. That's my higher power doing for me what I couldn't do for myself. Because I still have no idea why I said no. I couldn't tell you to this day. I just know I was really drunk and I told him no. I was like, I remember saying, no, I'm too drunk to drive you home. And then I proceeded to walk out the bar, put the keys in the ignition, and try to drive myself home. So, these are the things that I did, right? I was a blackout drinker, man. I still learn things about the things that I've done. My amends are ongoing, and I have no idea when they're going to end, because I learn new things about myself and the things I've done to people. And I'm forced to make new amends, or like I'll see someone and all of a sudden I'll be like, well, something's weird. Why do I feel so weird? And I'll realize, oh shit, I owe this person amends. Like I did this, or I did that, or I manipulated them here, or stole from them, whatever. I talked to my sponsor about that. He laughs because he's like, yeah, that for a blackout drinker, sometimes that never ends. And that's how my sobriety's been so far. My second time in jail, I did some prison time. I went to work release for like 8.5 months. That's where I was introduced to AA for the first time. I definitely did not let anything stick. As soon as I got out, and I'm on probation, mind you, I'm right back to drinking. I don't even think they had the ankle monitor off my ankle before I was partying again. And that's, right back to it. The next 2 years of my life, I'm back in, I'm running nightclubs, I'm doing the thing on probation, I'm selling drugs. My life had not changed at all, other than the fact that I have a record now. It's the only thing that changed. And my probation officer starts to realize that there's something different with me. Like, I'm not doing the things that like people who aren't drinking and partying are doing. So I start going in and out of jail, right? Probation violations, parole violations, just out all kinds, like all the time. I ruined countless relationships. I was in an extremely codependent, abusive relationship with another alcoholic for a while, and I tried to get sober. Was in and out, that revolving door kind of sobriety for a while. I fast forward to 2 years ago. I met my wife. We met at Cracker Barrel as servers, which was, I love Cracker Barrel, so woo woo, right? But we met. We hated each other initially. I'm an alcoholic who is in active use, so it's easy to hate me, right? I'm easy to not like, because I'm kind of a douche when I drink, right? I have the ego the size of Texas when I'm not working a program, and now it's only like the size of New York. So, we're getting better. But I got sober for a time period. We ended up getting married, and like 2 months later, I relapsed.
The Ashley or the box?
And like 6 months later, she left. Like, that's how quick my bottom. That's how quick I plummet into insanity again, right? I started working at a bar as a bartender. Jumped right back into selling drugs, jumped right back into stealing and all of this crazy stuff. And, she left and took the kids, and that was a reality check for me. Not right away, though, like 6 weeks later. I used to say it was like a couple of weeks, but it turns out my recollection of time is off. It was more like 6 to 8 weeks, and right, there's a big gap there. My bad. But I can admit when I'm wrong too, so that's great. So like, I ended up getting sober, and I remember talking to my sponsor before I got sober, and he had told me, and this was kind of an eye-awakening moment. He said, "You know what, dude? When you're ready to get sober, I'm going to be here. But until then, stop calling me with all your sob stories. I don't care. I don't want to hear them. I can't do anything for you until you're serious." And he walked away from me. And I remember I said, I have like the ego the size of Texas in active use. Nobody walks away from me. Like, I was pissed. I'm furious. So let me show you how this is done, man. And I went out and I went hard, right? And by the grace of God, I never caught any new charges. I didn't damage myself too crazy. I came back into sobriety, and my wife ended up coming back. Lots of groveling and counseling later, but we are we're still together, and life's amazing. A couple months into sobriety, I went to this thing called PensiPA, which is the Pennsylvania State Conference for Young People in Alcoholics Anonymous, and it changed my life, dude. I was definitely that guy that thought that I wouldn't be able to have fun in sobriety, and this quickly changed that idea. And now I go to men's conferences. I was a GSR until I got a new job working at a rehab, where I'm a drug and alcohol counselor. So I went from being a nightclub bar manager to a drug and alcohol counselor. And if that doesn't tell you that this program works, I'm not really sure how else to show that to you. Like, my life is done a complete 180. I went from being a drug dealing, drug using douchebag, for lack of a better term, to a guy that couldn't be a father, a guy that couldn't be a husband, I couldn't be a son, I couldn't be a friend, I couldn't be anything other than a user, to a husband, father of 6 beautiful kids, a son, a brother, a friend, a coworker, a counselor, a sponsor, a confidant. Like, I'm all these things now, right? And not saying that sobriety's been easy. My wife got diagnosed with cervical cancer a couple months ago. Had emergency surgery like a week and a half ago. My daughter got really sick at one point. My wife has a lot of health issues, and things have been rough. It's not easy. Sobriety isn't easy. If it was easy, we'd all be sober and we wouldn't have to do this, right? But it's not. I need people to help me. I need a support group. I need a sponsor. I need the steps. I need a higher power first and foremost before all of that. And because this program, I have those things. I have at least a dozen people that I can see on my screen right now that I know if I had an issue, I could call. And that's crazy because none of them live anywhere near me. Like, I think New York City is the closest to me. And, like, that's insane to me. Like, I have people all over the world, like, the world, where, like, if I'm really struggling and I don't know what to do, and that's kind of been a thing the past couple of days. God plays tricks on me, and I'm pretty sure that that's what this is. But I've been struggling, and I've been reaching out, and I've been honest. Things like crazy thoughts have popped into my head lately. A lot of things are going on in my life, and it has nothing to do with what's going on in the world. Like, that, completely outside of everything else. Like, my life's crazy, and it's been hard for me to accept that I can't control any of that. And when I don't have control, I freak out. Sorry, I get anxious thinking about it. But the beautiful thing is that I have a sponsor, and I have friends, and I have family I can call and I can count on. And the crazy thing about this whole, web-based AA is that now I have friends that I can literally call any time of the day, and someone's going to be awake, because they're all over the world now, right? And, I haven't wanted to drink. I've had some other crazy thoughts, but drinking hasn't been one of them, and that has to do with things like this. I am thoroughly convinced that if it wasn't for these online meetings and the great friends that I've made in the past couple of weeks, I probably wouldn't be here anymore. And that's a really scary thought to have, but it's true. And if I've learned anything, it's that honesty is the key to everything. If I'm not willing to be honest with the people that care about me the most, then who am I going to be honest with? But that's not to scare anyone either. That's to show you that, you know, this program works, because it gives me hope every single day. It gives me a reality that I have something to live for every single time I wake up, and that I'm happy to wake up nowadays where I didn't used to be. And I'm entirely so happy that this happened, because I needed it. And I'm super blessed to be able to do this. And that is all I have.
Thanks, Alan.